Friday, everybody. My name's Indy, and the gentleman next to me is Jay Powell from Powell Group Consulting, and we'll talk a little bit about what Powell Group Consulting does a little bit later, but we want to welcome Sam Goddard, or otherwise known as Swammy, and he is the founder of Black Box Studios, and we're going to be talking about indie game content creation, social media growth, the new game he's working on, and all kinds of fun stuff. You know how we stay totally 100% on topic. So welcome.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Welcome, Swammy.
Always. That's what we're known for, is staying on topic. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
The beauty of this show growing like it has is Sam and I were at a conference together last week, and he's like, "Oh yeah, hey, I'm on your podcast next week." I'm like, "Oh yeah, totally knew that. I absolutely 100% remembered that." But let's start with, tell us how you originally got into the industry and walk us through what you've been doing up to this point.
So it's a bit of an interesting story, a bit more unique. So around 2019, I had moved from New Zealand back to the UK, as I am British, despite my accent being a bit funny to some people. So I moved back to the UK, and around that time, COVID started. So I didn't have any job, like any proper income, living with my parents at the time. And from there, I went into Fiverr. I used some of my game development skills. I kind of self-taught myself up until that point in time to work on, environments and blueprints to like help people with their games. And from there, I started building a bit of an income from that. But eventually, I was watching an anime that I was already a big fan of called Attack on Titan. It's a very huge anime, probably one of the biggest ones in the world. And I kind of had this concept of like, what would it be like if I turned that like anime into like a video game concept of sorts. And I kind of turned it into this first person, like grapple hook swinging around simulator, I guess. And I wasn't planning on posting about it anywhere until my girlfriend said, "Oh, you should make a TikTok about it." And I'm like, no one's going to care about like game development on TikTok. Like they're just going to like all the dancing and stuff, right? But from there, I posted a TikTok after being convinced, and it got like 70,000 views on the first video. I'm like, oh, wow, maybe there is like an audience for game development on TikTok. And I slowly started posting more and more and kind of engaging with the audience. I had slowly started to build. And after like 6 months, I had like 150, 200,000 followers. And some of my views went from getting 70,000 views to a few million views. And it just kept on growing. And from there, I eventually was averaging a few million views per video. I had videos getting one video that got to 14 million views. And there was clearly an audience for this, where gamers like to see basically to be able to interact with game developers and kind of give their feedback and kind of see it implemented into the games and kind of having that connection, which I think when you're working in like the more bigger AAA side of the industry, you kind of lose that connection. And you see it pretty commonly with a lot of, some games kind of losing the vision that they set out with the community early on. And from there, I basically had a lot of people saying, hey, Sam, hey, Swammy, you should you should make your own like original game. We'd love to see what you could like think of and do. And from there started a game I'm working on now to this day called Mecha Attack. And I basically just kept on working on this concept, and it slowly turned into this like anime, like RPG game. And eventually it was probably around later into 2019, maybe in like August or October, I was reached out by Global Top Round, who basically contacted me and said, hey, we kind of like what you're doing. Send us a build to your game you're working on. And, we're doing this top 20 thing. If you get selected out of all these studios, we'll fly you out to Sweden. And I submitted the game. They liked what they saw. And I went to Sweden, did some pitching, met with some publishers, and kept growing my connection into the industry. And that was my very first like actual event in the industry. And that was only later last year. So I'm very much a noob to the industry. So yeah, and it's just kept going since then. And yeah.
All right, so you're doing solo dev then. I mean, do you have a team, or is it just you?
Yeah, so at this point in time, it is pretty much just me. I'm the only full-time employee, I guess. I do have some people who already have full-time jobs, but like to help out in their spare time, basically, who would love the opportunity, like if we can get like a publishing deal to sign on, because the beauty of having such a large social media following is it is like a trump card that you have with publishers. And it is something why whenever I talk to people and I see these awesome games, I'm like, do you have like any social media? And they're like, yeah. And then I look at it and they've got like no followers, no views on the videos. They're doing like completely wrong. And I'm just thinking, like, do you have so much potential to basically be like, hey, look, publishers, I have this really cool game, but I also have an audience. So there's all the risk gone. And the bonus as well is I get emails, I get DMs every day from really talented people in the industry with far more experience probably than myself, who've been doing this for very long, who look at the stuff I'm doing and be like, I want to work with you. And I have to politely be like, I can't at the moment. I'll keep you in mind. I'll take your portfolio. And it just means scaling will be a very easy process, as we already have pretty much every role I want to fulfill and like grow. When hopefully getting a publisher deal signed, or get an investor, for example, can scale up very quickly, because those roles can be filled pretty quick. So yeah.
So would you say that, you know, you look at these other publishers and they're doing social media wrong? Dive into that a little bit. What is like the first thing that you see that you're just like, oh my God, you have no idea?
Yeah, I mean, one of the funny things is I do like sponsored videos every once in a while. It's one of my other main sources of income, is doing sponsored content for other games and promoting their games. And this usually is done through a publisher who then work with typically like a third-party agency who handle all of the marketing and stuff like that. And one of the biggest thing I run into is, like, as the creator, I know my audience. Typically, as a content creator, you know your audience, you know who you're dealing with, and you know what they like to see, right? So you are technically probably the best at pitching this title to them. And I find a lot of publishers go down the route of, let's just throw our game to a third-party agency and give them some money, and hopefully it gets some views, or they'll pay to promote it, which is even worse, by the way. Is if you don't have an organic audience coming in, people will just be like, I don't care, this is just an ad. Like, I'd rather like see it organically into your feed, and that's how you actually grow an audience. And yeah, most of the time I'm getting feedback and from these people I sponsor videos with, in some cases, depending from where they are, and they're just saying like, hey, change this and that. And I'm like, this will come off like an ad read. It won't be engaging, and it will lose all of that, character and personality. And then I think that's where you find the social media side of things is kind of just seen and done wrong by publishers and even developers. And I think that's just a case of not having experience in content creation. So yeah.
So, I mean, did you have a lot of experience in content creation before you started doing this?
Mm-hmm. So I did I did run a YouTube channel when I was younger in high school. It was completely different. You can't find it anymore. I did Minecraft like animations and stuff like that, and I did like Minecraft like music video like parodies and stuff, which were very big at the time when I was like, this is like when I was 14, 15. And I got to like 20,000 subscribers, which at the time I was pretty proud of. And I had a few videos with like a few million views. So I guess I had a bit of experience in social media. But when I started TikTok, I'd never used TikTok before. I had no clue about it. I think I just kind of had a bit of a knack for like editing and having this like engagement with the community and asking them constantly for feedback. As I always say, with even when it comes to the game stuff that I've done, or like the videos I make, I constantly say to people, if you hate what I make, if you don't like what I make, can you give me some constructive criticism on why, so I can improve it so that you can feel engaged? And I think that's what's helped me grow, is I've never looked at my content and said, yeah, this is amazing, this is perfect. I look at it and go, this could still be better. And I kind of just keep improving from there. So yeah.
Now, do you push on any of the platforms aside from TikTok?
Yeah, so what I originally started doing is, because TikTok was the only platform I started with, and as soon as it started growing, I realized very quickly that I noticed a lot of other content creators who did TikTok would kind of have a burst of growth and then eventually run into the issue of their content becoming stagnant, the audience being less engaged, and from there they had already killed the one and only audience and source of growth right away, because they didn't spread all of this audience into different locations. So one of the first things I did was Discord, and I'm very proud to say that it's done very well for us. Currently, the Discord's at 420,000 at the moment members, which is something that is definitely another good point I bring up the publishers as well. And yeah, from now I kept growing that, and then I eventually was like, oh, I've made I've made a Twitter, I've made an Instagram, I made a YouTube, and what I would do is at the end of my videos I'd be like, almost like reverse psychology. On a TikTok video I would say, be sure to subscribe or whatever, and people would be like, oh, but it's TikTok, you meant to follow. And then some people are like, oh, he has a YouTube, and people like, I guess subconsciously went to the YouTube then to subscribe to that without like outright saying, go to my YouTube, guys, go subscribe. Because for some people that reads off like an ad read, and you have to find these like tricks to kind of like slowly ease people into different areas on socials. And from there it's worked. I mean, the YouTube has been growing pretty steadily since then. One thing I would like to focus on more is like Instagram and stuff, but it's a bit harder to grow on that platform, as I think it has less of an audience for game development than platforms like YouTube and TikTok. So yeah.
So when you're building out the content, what type of content is it? Is it, videos from the gameplay? Is it you talking about something? Is it, what is resonating? And does it change per platform?
Yeah. So what I figured out probably like a year ago is that you can basically make a TikTok, for example, and you can post that on Instagram and YouTube, and pretty much the exact same video with barely any changes. Apart from, like I mentioned before, you can have like, oh, go subscribe, go follow, switching it up so it makes sense for which platform you're on. But other than that, you can post pretty much the same thing. And for the most part, it should be, if it's an engaging video, people will probably watch it on every platform. Albeit you'll definitely see like a difference in views. And I think for the most part, my content has kind of just been a mix of either like game development, where I'm like going, oh, here's like an update on what I've been working on. Or I'm like, hey, I have this like concept or idea. What do you think of this? And then I have people like give their ideas in the comments. And then from there, I take like, oh, I'm like, I look at the ideas and I'm like, hey, this is actually like a really cool idea. Let's see like hypothetically what this could look like. And then I kind of implement it, probably in a very quick rushed way, but like it still shows it. And I think the audience like see that, like I've responded to that comment in the video, and that you see that comment with that idea, and then you see that idea like visualized, and they're like, oh wow, this developer is like actually listening and actually like taking our feedback and ideas. And like that's something where I think that's really beneficial, is it does help build a trust with your audience. And I think that is really, really important, especially when you're seeing, a lot of games who, making either cool games or maybe games on a bigger scale, and just kind of don't have that trust, early on.
All right, sorry, I'm laughing because I just realized where I recognized that little pink A behind you over your left shoulder.
Yeah. That's the only space I have for it at the moment.
Say I'm stealing shit from the parties. It's like,
okay, I didn't steal it. They gave it to me. I mean, they may have taken it off the table as they didn't have an actual award at the time, but
sorry, I was just like, man, that thing looks familiar. I was like, oh, I know what that's from. I was at that party. So
yeah,
it's adorable.
Yeah, it's a little 3D printed thing. Thank you, Gaming Mortar. Shout out to Gaming Mortar. Playgon.
We were going back to being a solo dev and this being your income. So you mentioned that you were doing some sponsored content to fund the game. What else are you doing? How are you keeping the lights on, so to speak, while you work on your project before you get funding from it?
Yeah, so one of the big helps early on to keep me afloat was Global Top Round. They gave when we got selected as top 10, we got the $40,000 investment, and for keeping one developer afloat, that was quite a lot, to keep the lights on, keep my belly full, and to make sure that the game was still being worked on and getting updates, so we could get into that pre-production later phase, so that we could send out builds to publishers and be like, hey, here's this build you guys were asking for, and kind of hopefully get a deal rolling from there. And we're pretty much at the end of that stage right now, and it's all going pretty well. And having Global Top Round's been great, as it has been really good at getting their feedback, getting their advice, and having them like kick open a lot of doors for us, so that I'm able to reach out to publishers who typically would, see solo developer making an anime RPG and be like, yeah, nah, I don't believe this, or like this sounds like a waste of my time. Because realistically, if it wasn't for the circumstances of the social media following, and all of these other factors I mentioned, it would be far more of a difficult sell. And like I said, that's why the social media aspect, the community, the audience, and as much as I'm very proud of how the game looks, I think for the most part, that has been very beneficial. Yeah.
So, and I am familiar with the game. I've seen it at least 2 shows now,
Mm-hmm.
and it does look fantastic. But it also, to be fair, it looks very similar to Genshin when you just look at the video set aside. So, how does it? Is that a good thing for social media, or is that a bad thing? Do you get a lot of feedback that, it's a ripoff and blah, 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 because they can't see everything involved?
Yeah.
How does that play in for the pros or cons?
I think immediately when I first started working on Mecha Attack, it had a very different vision. It was like purely like a third person like anime shooter, and it kind of like slowly branched into what it is now. And I think it's one of those things where if you make any anime style game and you attach the word RPG or gacha or open world to it, you're gonna get compared to the top games. I mean, you see it with, like any shooter games, you'll get compared to Call of Duty, you'll get compared to think, oh, this is a COD ripoff, or this is, a ripoff of this game. I think you're gonna get that with whatever you do. All I've been doing is basically trying to do my best over time to kind of slowly like separate that. But if anything, if someone leaves a comment saying, "Oh, this reminds me of Genshin Impact," to me, that's almost a win being compared to the visuals of a game that's been done by a very large studio with hundreds of artists and developers and an absurd budget. Being like almost like grouped there, like somewhat, is almost a win. So I kind of take it as a win. But I do think visually it is a thing where I'm trying to like almost like make different changes to kind of make it feel a bit more like it's got its own original look. But I think you're always going to get compared. Yeah.
No, you are. I mean, it's a reality of the fact. And so it's just a matter of what you do with that feedback, and do you spin it around, or do you acknowledge it and move on, or what have you. But I mean, that is a good point. I mean, you're doing this on your own, and the visuals are on par with Genshin. I mean, and it's been like that for at least with the first time I saw it in Sweden. Matter of fact, I think the first time I saw it in Sweden, I thought it was Genshin.
Yeah. I've done a lot since Sweden to do my best to kind of like take a step up. I mean, one of the things I like to say is the cell shading of the game, because it is an anime, stylized game. Is one of the things I've done is try to take advantage of the fact that I'm using Unreal Engine, which is typically an engine that you use for more realistic games, realistic lighting. Like, because out of the box, Unreal can look beautiful compared to other engines where you kind of have to put more effort into the visuals to make it look good. But cell shading has always been a bit of a more interesting one. So shout out to anyone who's had to deal with that using Unreal to do stylized games, because it can be tough. But I've managed to like get a system in place where we have like actual shadows casting on these cell shaded characters and the lighting interacting, which you don't see in like games like Genshin Impact. Whether that's obviously it could be for performance reasons or whatnot, but just trying to like do little advancements, even if it is, still trying to, be in the same vein as these more larger titles. So yeah.
And it's a very good take on it too, because one of the downsides of using Unreal is if you're using it for something realistic looking or, gritty looking, and your demo doesn't look nearly AAA, it actually backfires on you, because you're whether you like it or not, when you're working with Unreal, you're going to be compared to the graphical quality of other AAA titles. But by taking it into the anime style with the cell shading, you avoid all of that because you're not in the same art style, and so you can't be necessarily compared to whatever looks like. So that's a fantastic design decision to utilize the power of the Unreal Engine without having to be compared to AAA titles that are being developed on it. All right, so we got questions coming in here.
Awesome.
From Discord, how long does content take to produce on average, from brainstorming to posting it on social media?
That's a good question, because I think it varies depending on what content that you're actually making. If you're talking about TikTok, which is one of the ones, I think if you're a developer and you're not using TikTok, you need to get on it right away, and start growing it as fast as you can, because it's such an easy way. But even like if you're like, let's say an indie developer who you don't have a community manager, like I don't have one, and I'm still doing this while also making the game and all that stuff. That's a work-life balance conversation for later, but yeah. but basically, yeah, no, it depends. If you're making a TikTok, which typically for me, I recommend around 10 seconds to 20 seconds long is usually like the sweet spot. It can take anywhere as a few hours max to make one, and that's from planning to filming the video to editing the video and uploading it. But for some cases, like I actually had a conversation with someone in Malta about like how what videos should you make, like how do I engage with this audience? I see people on TikTok doing dancing and memes and stuff like that. I'm like, well, if you see something trending on TikTok, just like scroll for a bit, get into the algorithm, like gaming and stuff like that. You look at what you see, like see the memes people are making. I have like a video about Mecha Attack with like two cats, like with like text above their heads, and it's like a meme, right? Like it's like a meme format, and it's like 7 seconds long, and it has like 3 million views or something like that. So and that took me 5 minutes on my phone in bed to make, and that has given Mecha Attack a boost in pre-registrations and stuff like that. So it's just it depends, but for the most part, it doesn't take that long. If you're making a YouTube video, that's where it can take a bit more time, depending on, because you're going from like obviously 10 to 20 seconds now to like potentially 5 to 10 to 15 minutes long. And that's a longer process. That can take a day or more to make. But I think you shouldn't be spending on a TikTok or Instagram reel or a YouTube short any more time than 2-3 hours, because at that point, I think your quality should be pretty good by then. So yeah.
So how many hours a week do you spend on social media in general, whether that's YouTube videos or TikTok, Instagram?
I honestly think if I don't have an actual like number I can think of off the top of my head that would probably be accurate, because I think it changes week by week, because I'm constantly doing different things where obviously like I work on like Mecha Attack like a 9-to-5 job, like Monday to Friday, like that's my like day job pretty much. And then usually social media is something where I kind of have at the time, like after I finish my work with Mecha Attack and stuff for the day, if I want to make a video, what I'll do is hopefully by that point I'll have an idea in my head. Because usually like just scrolling TikTok, like while I'm having lunch or something, or taking a break, I come across some things like, oh, that could be a cool idea, or that's like a cool TikTok sound I can make a good like a meme or like a good video about. And from there I just kind of take like maybe 2 hours maybe max for me. Like usually like it only can take like an hour for most of the time, and I just start recording a video, editing the video, and I didn't use any fancy tools. I use CapCut on PC. It's completely free to use, and it's already got like built-in like resolution setups for TikTok and Instagram, so it's really easy for me to use, and it's really quick editing. And yeah, and then maybe I'll do a voiceover, upload it, put like a few hashtags, the title that like I think's engaging, and hopefully it does well. So yeah.
So next one from Discord. At what point would you consider your post having momentum? How do you use those analytics towards future posts?
Yeah, see, this one's an interesting one, because it's not the easiest question to answer, as every social media platform has a different way that the algorithm pushes out your content to the audience and to the right audience, especially if you're like, let's say, making a game that's in a far more smaller niche that might not have a big audience on TikTok. It might take some more time for it to find its right audience and push it out. For me personally, my like average views per video that I'm like happy with, like if a video for me gets over 100,000 views after 24 hours, that's a success. Like that's a good video for me on TikTok. And but on YouTube, if my video gets 2,000 to 5,000 views on YouTube Shorts in a day, that's also a success, and it's very vastly different. Because because on TikTok, a video can go viral in the first hour. I had a video, which I mentioned earlier, the 14 million view one. I remember I was living with my parents still at the time, and I had posted this TikTok, and I was going to go watch a film. It was like the Ryan Reynolds, like Free Guy film. So I went to Weatherspoons. It was like 20, 30 minutes down the road. And after posting that video, in 30 minutes of posting it, it had like 800,000 views. And then from there, I went and I watched the film, and it'd been like a few hours later, and it was at 8 million views. And that was a video where within 24 hours, it had gone to 10 million views. And that was insane for me at the time. Like, that's a lot of people. I was getting loads of followers, getting lots of engagement. And that's something I don't think you can really predict. You can look at a video, and I think after 24 to 48 hours, you can tell if the video did bad or not. And the main key factors you have to look out for is your watch time and how many people actually got to the end of the video. Because on YouTube and TikTok, now on TikTok, you can actually see this. Back when I started, you couldn't. So it was a feature requested from TikTok, and they added it in. You can basically see how many people were watching at the start of the video and where it starts like dipping down, and like what points of the video did people start, swiping away from it. Because on TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, the most important thing is the first 3 seconds, because most people will look at the first like few frames of your video and decide immediately, am I interested in this or not? And if you don't capture their attention in that 3 seconds and hold their engagement, your video will do terrible. And that's the thing I noticed with a lot of other creators who have started getting into the game development side of TikTok, and they're posting videos about like, oh, here's like a tour of our studio. And I'll be like, as much as I'm like, oh, that's cool, most people on TikTok do not care. They're not going to be interested in that. They want to see your game or what you're working on or something cool you're doing, even if it's in like I said, a funny meme format, just something that's going to hook in an audience that, typically speaking, have a very, very short attention span and will swipe away if they feel even like 1% boredom from your content. And it makes it difficult. It makes it a very hard space to get into, especially now more than ever, as it is constantly growing. I think since COVID started, and we saw a lot more people getting into social media and doing TikToks and stuff like that. So it's definitely a harder space to get into. But yeah, I think for the most part, just pay attention to watch time and how many people, like what percentage, because usually it tells you, finish your video, because that number is really important. Because TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, the thing they care about most, more than anything, is that you are keeping people on their platform for longer. And if you're doing that, they're going to show your video to more people, and the cycle continues and the views grow. So yeah.
So is there a specific demographic that you've noticed on TikTok versus everything else? I mean, we know that there are demographics that align with certain, consoles or genres or things like that. Mm-hmm. Is the same thing true on social media, or does it vary between the different platforms?
I think it's an interesting one, because on TikTok for me, and it almost is the same on pretty much every other platform I've noticed, is this you obviously have your demographics for like countries and stuff like that, which I do find there's a vast difference between platforms. And one of the main ones I notice is whenever I talk about mobile game development and mobile games and things like that, my audience drops off from like the United States and UK and Europe for the most part, and it immediately shifts towards like Philippines, and Thailand and all these other countries where mobile gaming is far bigger, right? And I definitely think then you can see like the demographics can shift, and I definitely think there is a platform difference depending on your demographics. I think you can kind of have a mix of both. For me, I've talked about mobile game development. I've also like covered PC and console stuff and like mentioned all of that. And I don't see any necessarily major view difference between both. I think if there's an audience, even if it's a smaller niche, there's still potentially millions upon millions, if not hundreds of millions of people you can still reach. And for the most part, for game development, just cover gaming. Like, it's under that gaming branch on TikTok and YouTube. And people are surprisingly interested in how games are made, because a lot of younger audience, like the younger generations, have little to no clue how it works. I've had people, I did a live stream not too long ago where I asked people, how long do you think it takes for like a AAA, let's say like a AAA open world RPG to be made, right? And I gave them like different options, and one of the options was 1 to 3 months to make, and there was a lot of like the younger people were picking that, and that just shows that they don't necessarily know about how game development works. And there's definitely like then a field where you can be like, we're making this game, here's how we're making it. And I think a lot of people are interested in that because they just don't know, and it's like a whole new world for them to explore and get into. So yeah.
Well, I mean, we can tell from the comments that we see on social media from people that they have no idea how games are made either. I mean, that's again, we make games in spite of gamers a lot instead of just for them. All right, so next one. How were you able to determine your target demographic, and what research did you rely on for that?
So for me, I'm actually signed with a talent agency called EMC Talent, who have been incredibly helpful at helping me find which like demographic I fit into. But before I signed with them, I already kind of had a pretty good grasp, and that was basically just from analyzing my analytics, seeing which the countries were my main audiences. I actually have a very large United States audience. I have a large audience in the United Kingdom. But one of my top 3 was, I believe it was like Philippines. And that was mainly from like mobile gamers. And from there, I could realize that, there's definitely this like audience I can like target for, like mobile games and stuff like that, and mobile game development. And how is the process of, porting a game to mobile? Like, how does that work? And answering those questions, because there's a lot of people who use like Android and stuff like that who think they look at like a game that's like got PC level graphics, and it's like Unreal Engine 5, it's got ray tracing, it's using Lumen, and they look at it and they're like, is this on my Android? And I'm like, no, it's not.
Yes,
like, I'm sorry,
totally
your phone,
yes.
Your phone is gonna be cooked. It's gonna probably explode if it even opens it, which it wouldn't. But my point is that like, there's definitely like once again another audience there where you can explain to them like how does that process work, how do games get ported, and how are mobile games made. And if you're making a mobile game, you've got probably potentially a bigger audience than even PC and console on TikTok, because in the end people are on TikTok typically on their phones. So yeah.
So this one that comes in from Indy. Do you ever use AI in any step of creating your content? And if so or not, why or why not?
Okay, so AI is an interesting thing for me because I kind of have like this stance on it with I definitely can see how it can be useful. I mean, like I've used like ChatGPT and stuff to like, if I have like, let's say like some information and I want to quickly put it in a spreadsheet, for example, really quickly, and I don't want to go through the whole meticulous process of doing it myself, I can use something like that. And for that, it's really beneficial. I guess technically as well, you have like in CapCut, it has like AI like voice detection for like making captions, which for me is incredible, as it speeds up the process a lot. So if you're someone, for example, who wants to make a video where you talk over your video, and let's say even if it's like a 5-10 minute video in CapCut, for example, you can use auto captions, and there's a lot of other software that does this now, and it does auto captions for you. You don't have to like type out, add a text for everything you say, and it takes like an hour or 2 to do it. You can get it done in like 10-20 seconds. So I think for that it's really, really good. But for social media content, that's pretty much all I could really say. Is it's good for speeding up the process of some things, but other than that, I haven't seen too much else that I've really like seen a use for it yet. But yeah,
and it's different than a lot of like say ads or promotions that you would see on these platforms, because you're not using AI art to show somebody. I mean, you're promoting your game, you're using your own art. You don't need AI art. But no, I mean that's good to know that the caption. Does it do it in that same annoying woman's voice if it does voiceover on CapCut?
I don't know if CapCut has like a voiceover feature, because I just use it for the captions so that the texts are all generated for me, and I can just kind of like edit the text to like look different, or if like maybe it's like misheard me, I can adjust it really quickly. But for the most part, if you use TikTok, you will have that like a bunch of different voice types you can use if you like add text on, because on TikTok itself you can add text on the screen like captions, set how long it plays for, and make it have a voiceover as well. So if you don't want to even use your voice, you can technically use like a text to speech voice. Although I'll be honest, I think if you want to have an engagement and a trust of your audience, you should talk. And if not you talking, get someone else in your company or in your team or your studio to do the voiceover for you. As I think it's very good to have that voice that people hear right away and go, oh, this is blah blah blah. Or, in my case, they're like, oh, that's Swammy. I recognize that face. I recognize that voice. So yeah.
So from YouTube, is it possible to interact on TikTok without using only short videos? I know that's the majority of the content, but maybe there are other options too.
Yeah, so there's two other things that are becoming a bit more popular. Obviously, I still think short form content is the way to go, as it takes the least amount of time, but it tends to have like a really good return on investment, I guess. And you can do live streaming on TikTok is another one that is something I've started doing earlier this year, and it's done really well for me. I can get like up to a few thousand people watching me on TikTok live at once, and you can like stream from your computer as well. So you could like stream you working on your game. You can stream yourself playing your game, answering questions. You could do like a Q&A video, a Q&A stream. And that's really good, as you can gain followers from that. You can actually grow your account. And another cool thing is when you're live on TikTok, a lot of people actually don't know this. If you go live on TikTok, TikTok will start pushing out your older content again to viewers while you're live. Which is really good, because if you start live streaming for like an hour or two, during that time, your content you're posting is starting to get pushed out again. As people are seeing you live, they're also checking your profile now to see your videos you've made. And yeah, TikTok starts pushing it to the For You page. And another thing that is becoming a bit more popular and even being pushed by TikTok themselves is long form TikTok content, which is you can now upload a video on TikTok up to 10 minutes long. Don't do that, as I'll be honest, you're probably going to get the worst watch time in history on TikTok trying to get someone to sit there and watch your TikTok video for 10 minutes. No matter how good it is, I'll be very impressed if you had a good watch time, because for the most part, people won't even look at your video and just swipe through if they see one frame. And they see like a frame on the screen. Like, I don't like to look at this. I'm already moving on to the next video. So I think making videos that are between like 1 to 2 to 3 minutes long is definitely a potential good place to go.
What if we took a 10-minute video and cut it into like 15-second bursts? And
amazing. It's what, yeah. Your long form YouTube content is really good because you can link it to shorts and to TikToks like that. You can like, even doing a podcast like this is really good on TikTok. I see so many podcasts on TikTok where they just take like either a funny moment or like an interesting, conversation, and they cut it down into like a 10-15 second video. And they format it for vertical video, and they do really, really well. It's definitely a place where you can make like a long form YouTube video, take content from that video and put it into a YouTube short, for example. So yeah.
See, well, I'm not worried about it because we're going to have so much flow over from your TikTok into ours that it's just going to be it's going to be a no brainer. We got this thing. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm often told of the trap of marketing to other game devs with development logs. Do you have any tips on balancing updates without getting too technical?
Yeah, that is an interesting one, because you don't want to bore people to death talking about stuff that they potentially have no clue what you're on about. I usually, when I like cover an update, like on any of my videos, which you can go check them yourself, and you'll see like my updates on like Mecha Attack and stuff like that, or anything like that, you'll see that I very much go like, oh, I added this to the game. I added this and this and this. I don't go into detail much about it. I show visually what it is so that they're like, okay, that's cool. Like, I see you've added this to the game. This is how it works. I can see visually that. And then I move on very quickly. Like, I'm spending like a second and a half or 2 seconds maximum per cut. Like, if your TikTok video, and it sounds crazy because it is, once again, keeping people focused on your video. You should have a cut on a TikTok video at like at the latest every 3 seconds. Like, if you're on one cut of like gameplay or something for anything longer than 3 seconds, it's probably going to tank the performance of your video. And that's something that I think we will see probably get worse over time.
How can it get worse? How do you do content that's less than 3 seconds? What is
I mean,
wrong
you
with your generation, Sam? That's
yeah, it's not my generation. It's like my nephew's generation and younger. Like they live and breathe on, like, they're on their iPads. They're on iPads, and if you take the iPad off them, they're crying. They're upset. They're having a fit because they that younger generation, more so than even my generation, lives and breathes technology and social media, YouTube, TikTok, all of it, and you kind of have to appeal to them to grow, because in the end, a chunk of like TikTok and YouTube Shorts and stuff is a younger audience. Even if like your content isn't, or your game is, let's say, like a really gory, violent game, it doesn't matter what you do; it's going to get filtered into gaming. You're going to have a very, young um, person see this video, and if you're not keeping them hooked in right away, and you're appealing to them as well, your video's performance will realistically tank. So yeah.
all right. So I'm going to take this conversation completely off the rails based on what you just said, and the fact that we're 42 minutes in before I'm doing this is fairly remarkable.
Oh yeah.
The whole, no matter what you're talking about, no matter how gory or gritty your game is, you're going to get to a younger audience. And that's the reality, and that's why we've seen companies like Epic and Fortnite getting sued, because they're promoting something to a smaller audience, and then they had the whole thing with their skins a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you realize it. Lego Fortnite launched yesterday. At one point, there were 2.2 million players in it, compared to the next biggest section was the original Battle Royale that had like 500,000. What do you think of looking at, Fortnite basically becoming a platform? We've seen there was a game in Malta that was based on
pitching UEFN. Yeah.
Where do you see that fitting in? Is it something that you would consider, since you're already running in Unreal anyway?
Yeah, no, it is something that's very interesting to me, because you see it, I think, even further back. You look at Roblox. Roblox is one of the big titans of that. I like the audience on like, if you look at Fortnite, Lego, I think that's crazy, and you look at Roblox and what they've done over time is also just as insane. Obviously the key difference is Fortnite has a far more popular global view, especially when it comes to like news agencies covering it. Obviously you get into the scandals with like, oh, these skins have guns, so we got to take the guns off the skins, or you can't use them in certain modes because it has to be kid friendly. And that's obviously the issue of having such a wide audience, but your game is also based on shooting and killing people, right? Originally. And then you're now targeting Lego, which is typically a more younger audience. I love my Legos too. So, it's an interesting one, because I look at UEFN, and I remember with the Attack on Titan like fan game thing I was doing, I had people being like, oh, now that I can like they're thinking like, oh, I can make anything now in the UEFN, it's going to change the industry, and like everything is going to be completely wiped out, and like it doesn't matter like if you're a AAA studio or anything now, you've got to move over to UEFN. I remember when it initially was announced, people were like super like overhyping it, and it is amazing, don't get me wrong. UEFN, I think, is a place where you're going to see some cool stuff. I mean, I've already tried it out myself. I've seen some people making like these horror maps and stuff, but it's already something you've been able to do for a while, if not on a smaller scale, because in Roblox you can make anything. I've seen someone literally remake Call of Duty pretty much, and it has like realistic looking graphics as well. It's not like like Roblox characters, like proper, like really in-depth models. Like it plays well. It has a loadout system. It has like multiplayer, and it's like this is like insane that someone's made this in Roblox. And the UEFN, while as amazing as it is, you obviously are tied to the Fortnite movement system. You're tied to the actual player system of that game, and obviously you have to worry about like copyright issues. As Fortnite, I'm gonna let you use the lightsabers from Star Wars in your UEFN game, because you don't own the rights to Star Wars. Fortnite has the rights to using it in like skins and maybe limited time weapons and stuff, but you can't actually use them in the development side of things. So while I think UEFN has potential to make some very interesting content, and I definitely see people using it and taking advantage of it because of the fact that it definitely has a good potential revenue stream, like a really good like market gap for people to like go into. But I definitely think it's something where it's very early to tell and too early to say, because there's a lot of people who ISOR had amazing ideas, but they can't really achieve it with UEFN currently. But from what I remember seeing is UEFN has plans to expand and allow you to like customize the movement of the features, so you're not just stuck with that battle royale base character Fortnite person, right? More akin to what we're seeing with the Lego Fortnite, where it's not even Fortnite anymore. It's like it's literally a whole different game. But you can do the Fortnite dances, I guess. So that's where it kind of ties in. But yeah,
I'm very interested to see. I mean, obviously the Lego launched apparently this morning. The Rocket Racing launched, and then the Guitar Hero,
which looks cool,
tomorrow. The biggest issue that I see with it right now is that it's like if you want to promote your game, you can do it on TikTok or wherever and point directly to your game. You can't do that in Fortnite yet. And that's my biggest concern. It's like whether or not you get discovered is basically at the whim of their algorithm or whoever finds it or that sort of stuff. But I think it was a wake-up call yesterday when all of a sudden this new mode that has nothing to do with what Fortnite is known for is all of a sudden bringing in 4x the users of the other one. So yes, that was my random question at the time. So if someone is just going to get, if they want to maintain a bit of that work-life balance while they're making their solo play game, TikTok is the place to be then, correct?
Yeah, 100%. Like more so than even YouTube or Instagram. I think if you can make a TikTok video, you can post it on YouTube Shorts as well. You can post on Instagram Reels, but yeah, TikTok is the easiest. 10 to 15 second long video will take you barely any time out of your day. You don't need to make them every day. Focus on making them really good quality, really engaging. If your first 5-10 videos don't do that well, don't be discouraged. Look at the analytics, see where people dropped off of the video. Get even friends, or maybe like if you're like older, find like someone's kid to look at the video and say like, see how they react to it. Just find anyone in an audience who can look at your video and get feedback on it, and then from there just kind of see what you need to change, because in the end it's just watch time and engagement. And if you can find that, you can very easily grow a community very quickly. And I've seen people starting to do it more often now. I'm seeing people being successful with it, and you don't need a million followers to have a strong audience. You don't need 400,000 Discord server members to have a strong audience. You just need to slowly grow it, and eventually the numbers will grow as well. So yeah.
So if you've got questions, we still got about 10, 15 more minutes here. Sorry, I'm getting messages back channel, and Dan knows how this distracts me and shuts off my ADD. So I'm being told we only have like 5 more minutes.
Okay.
If you've got questions about social media, solo development, all of that sort of stuff, pop them in here. On the development side, why did you choose Unreal versus for the game you're doing? Unity is basically your only other option. So why did you go with Unreal?
Yeah, so I when I started learning game development when I was like 13 years old or something, I had my dad's laptop. I downloaded like Unity. I think it was used to be called like Unity Free or something like that back when I used it or something. And I started learning from there, and I eventually, like, I always saw stuff about Unreal Engine, and I'm like, that looks really cool. Like, I'd really like to use it. But at the time, you had to like pay to use it or get access. And then I found it was free. I tried it out, and I guess I kind of just fell in love with it as an engine. Despite its somewhat atrocious documentation and marketplace and other things and a lot of issues that it still has. I definitely think it's just an engine where I have kind of just grown accustomed to and more comfortable with it. I don't think there's any case where I could be like Unreal Engine's superior engine over Unity. I do think it is still down to a personal preference and also a case-by-case thing. If you're making a 2D game, don't use Unreal. Like, I wouldn't use Unreal for 2D games, for example. I would rather use a different engine in that case. But in my case, I'm making a larger, bigger scale game. Performance-wise, Unreal is really good with large open areas, as you've seen with like Fortnite and other titles. So it just kind of made sense to go that route. Even though Unity would probably be easier for like the anime style look, and be a bit easier to like get looking good early on. I'm pretty happy though with what I've managed to get going with Unreal, and yeah.
All right, completely lost my train of thought there again. Sorry, too much going on at one time. If you had to rewind and start over again on the social media side, despite the ridiculous success that you've had, what would you change?
Honestly, nothing. I'll do the same thing all over again.
Best answer ever to that question.
I mean, really, that all there is to it. I think if anything, I would probably just take what I've learned already. Like if I was able to keep my memories and like know what I did it already, I would just take the engagement things I'd learned about, like keeping people engaged. You know, my first few videos were like 40 seconds long and they had like boring text at the beginning. And I'm thinking like, if I look back on it, if I did what I did now, those videos would have probably had millions of views right away, not like 70,000. But I mean, even then, like you're not going to have every video do well. It's like a learning process. It's very much a case of trial and error. So for the most part, I'll just do the same thing. As much as that sounds like maybe like a not necessarily like an ego thing, but like a flex or something. I definitely think that is probably the best way to go about it, because in the end, realistically, anyone starting social media probably doesn't have too much experience in it unless you have a background in it. Just try it. I mean, you can't really do any harm. I just don't say something like incredibly controversial or something. But other than that, I mean, just stick to what you know, your game, what you're making, show it off, sound excited about it. I mean, I'm assuming everyone here is excited about their games. So just have fun with it and just make some fun, enjoyable content that you would look at or a younger audience would look at and be like, this is engaging and fun. Like if you're looking at your own video and you're like, this is a good video, it probably is a good video. So yeah.
All right, so we've got a very direct question. Mm-hmm. We have a horror game in development and we want to promote on TikTok. How do we start?
Yeah, so I actually know another studio who have been doing like a horror game, and they started doing TikToks, and they made the mistake right away of they alienated the audience by not covering English speaking people right away. I think on social media you probably want to try do your best to stick to a very large native audience, which I think for the most part do English, because TikTok, for example, have auto translating subtitles built into the app. So just speak maybe in English for the most part is one thing I would keep focus on, because then you've already got a really wide audience right off the bat. And then from there, just make sure that when you cover, because horror games, I don't know like how gory your game is or how violent it is. You do have to be careful. If you have blood in your videos, some platforms will restrict that video and not even tell you it's being restricted. In some cases on TikTok, you might get like a warning on your video that says this video is, you know, potentially like, harmful to younger audiences or something like that. But for the most part, if you kind of make sure like you disable blood in your game, for example, or like don't show it off too much, find the right angle and just keep your cuts really quick, like really snappy. Focus on getting your information you want to share about your game out incredibly quickly. Another thing I've seen do really well is slideshows. Like you can upload photos onto TikTok and people do like these slideshows. And I've seen a lot of horror games do that, where they're like, you guys, it's like, you bored of these horror games? Well, check out this game. And you like swipe between your slide. That's also another thing that can do quite well. I think if you do that, you make sure your content's quick. Horror definitely is a very popular genre I'm noticing on TikTok. There's a lot of like, I'm seeing Lethal Company blowing up like crazy. I think it's got like more concurrent players now than like the latest Call of Duty game, which is insane for like I think it's like a solo made indie game. And that's like a horror sort of game, right? And it's like co-op, for example. Like I think a lot of people want to play some cool horror games. So I think you definitely have a really good place on TikTok you can like definitely take advantage of. So yeah.
All right. So another one came in here from YouTube. Any suggestions on more narrative and art focused games without giving too much away?
I guess it's almost the same, but I think for the most part, you don't have to give much of anything away. I think just kind of give like an introduction to what you're making and just kind of like hook people in on a premise more than the actual content per se. Because you don't have to like spoil your own game to like, you don't have to show off stuff to like spoil it off. Just give them a premise that will hopefully, I mean, if I I'm sure everyone here's got like really cool games with really cool, interesting hooks, because that's what I've noticed from like going to all these, like seeing people pitching these games at these events I've been going to, is people have really cool, unique like premises and concepts and for their games. And I think that's enough. You don't have to delve into, here's like a 10-minute gameplay video of our game that we're not ready to show yet, or we don't want to show off or spoil. Just go straight into showing off the premise, showing off maybe like core mechanics that are interesting, show like a second clip of it. You don't have to spoil anything. And I think that's all you really need to do for like narrative and art focused games. But yeah.
Lethal Company has 118,000 overwhelmingly positive reviews. Holy shit.
Yes, it if I remember correctly, because it's on Steam charts, Lethal Company was doing insanely well on like current players. So currently it has 71,000 people playing the game. But in its all-time peak on Steam, concurrent players is 239,000 people. That is higher than Modern Warfare 3's peak, I believe. So they were not only like potentially probably even outselling on PC, on Steam than COD, but they were also like having more people playing it consistently. And this is made by one dude who, I don't even know if he did social media, so he could have potentially even had more growth if he wanted to off that. But I mean, it's just like I said, you need to just get yourself out there. And I obviously, you see it with one of the biggest examples is Among Us. That game came out for like a year or two. No one played it. Dead game. Absolutely dead. No one was playing it. Had like 100 viewers, 100 concurrent players max at its peak. No one played it. One streamer with a somewhat decent following is like, I want to, I saw this game on Steam. I'm going to try it out. He streams the game, goes viral. And then that sets off Among Us's crazy journey to where it is now. Because one streamer was like, hey, I'm going to play this game. So if you build that social media thing and you get people playing your games because they've seen your socials, they're seeing like videos or streams, and then that just skyrockets even further. And then with Lethal Company, the YouTube content people are making on that getting millions upon millions of views easily. TikToks, I'm seeing like at one point when it came out and it was doing really well, I was scrolling on TikTok and every other video was Lethal Company. It was people like playing with their mates and like screaming because the voice chat's all funny or something, and it's like scary. That's all you have to do.
But for God's sakes, people, do not go out there and base your marketing plan on hoping one streamer watches your game and decides to play it and then you go viral like one of these. That's not a business plan. Sam, thank you.
That's
so
a
much.
Unicorn is what that is.
That's beyond a unicorn. That's like an albino unicorn rainbow horn type thing. Thank you so much, man. I mean,
yes,
I've obviously followed the game for a year or so now. It's amazing what you're doing, especially as a solo dev, and to see the success that you've had on social media in general is fantastic. And so you are obviously welcome at any point in time back here, or just to hang around the Discord and answer questions from people, man.
100%. No, more than down. If anyone has any questions for me, you can reach out at any point. So yeah,
man, it's super inspiring, and thank you so much for being humble. So the big takeaway I got from this is not make content that is entertaining, and just do more than you gotta look at your watch time and your engagement, right? Yeah. That's like the basic takeaways from that stuff. You got to watch when people are watching.
Hey, Dan, and watch in the Discord.
Am I muted in Discord? Well, Discord doesn't need to hear. Discord doesn't need to hear anything I'm saying.
Sorry, Discord people.
Sorry, Discord people. You know what? That's why you should be on Twitch or YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn.
Subscribe to the YouTube. On our server. Follow the Twitch guys.
Because you can actually see us too. You can't just hear us on the thing. But what I was saying is the takeaway is make. You know, how do you succeed? Make entertaining stuff, right?
Yeah.
No, and then make sure, and so you do a lot of work in the back end, which is awesome. Watch time and engagement. So Jay, I was looking at our podcast, and we have 333 podcast episodes up. This is not counting the YouTube stuff. And so we made a couple podcasts, and not one time ever have we ever talked about what Powell Group Consulting does.
We should have somebody from that crew on the podcast.
I know.
That would be amazing. And it is. And this came up twice when Sam and I were, at this conference in Malta. I've been in this industry for 25 years, and the Powell Group is 13 years old or whatever. And I still get people that come up to me and go, "Oh my God, love the podcast. I'm on your Discord. I didn't know you had a consulting company." And I'm like, who do you think pays for the rest of this shit?
Yeah, because we've made tens of dollars from the podcast. Actually, it's hundreds. It's not thousands. It's hundreds. So
it's yeah. There's no comma in our revenue. So the Powell Group is a business consulting firm, and we work with everybody from indie devs like Sam to help find. Sam's not a client. Sam's a client.
I'm a friend.
But we do everything from helping indie devs find publishers. We also do scouting for publishers and investors. And then we do a lot of what I call the boring consulting stuff, which is not really boring, but we go in and do audits and marketability and revenue forecasting and gameplay analysis for publishers and investors, and all the way up to, we've had Fortune 50 companies come to us and say, "Hey, look, we're wanting to get into games and we don't know the very first thing about it. Can you show us how?" And so we do. So it's a lot of business licensing and production consulting for almost everyone in the industry. And if you're interested, just ping me or someone or one of the other Powell Group folks on the Discord, and we'll get you set up. But yeah, I do have a real job, amazingly enough. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yes. So thank you, Powell Group Consulting, for funding this indie game business journey.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, Dan. It was like,
oh man, Sam, you're super inspiring, dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's amazing. It's amazing and super impressive. So learn from this, everybody. Learn.
All right. So is this our last pod of the year?
Yeah.
Because I know I'm going next week.
Mm-hmm. Special. I'm on the final podcast of 2023.
Oh, sweet. You get to wrap it up. All right, Dan. So wrap up 2023 for us.
Sure. That's put me on the spot. We've got bajillions of thank you everybody for joining us, right? Indie game business, we have merch. Okay. So there is in our link tree, we've got a merch store. I just ordered 3 hoodies for everybody in the family except for me.
Well, you've got a special hoodie on the way.
I've got a super special hoodie on the way, which is awesome. I know because somebody messaged me and this is like, "Hi, this is Jay's wife." And I'm like, "Oh, I've never talked to you before." And then we had like a 40-minute conversation. No, I didn't talk to her. She just asked me what I wore and I told her. Yeah, but you know what? We are on YouTube. Like I said, we're streaming on YouTube. We are on LinkedIn. We are not on X. We are on Facebook and on Twitch. So, and also the Discord.
On TikTok.
We're on TikTok. We are on TikTok. You know what?
TikTok.
We should start doing a bunch of lives on TikTok so we could be able to stream onto TikTok.
Yeah,
wow,
definitely should. Yeah, that
would be amazing. So, and what does Pepster say? When Julie reached out to me, I was all excited. I never get to talk to her. That was the first time I've ever talked to her in years. So, lucky you. Yeah. So thank you so much. And our Discord, discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. And next year, it's just in a couple months. It's February. The dates are 20th, 21st. Yes, that is the next Indie Game Business Conference. It's the first one in 2024. If you're interested in that, indiegame.business, or actually it's indiegamebusiness.com now, because indiegame.business didn't work. Or maybe does it still work?
No, it is. For those of you listening later, we are in the process of building new websites. And so for the last couple of days, there's been a whole lot of wires getting crossed and everything as we move providers. But so, yeah, it is still indiegame.business. It's just a matter of, as of today, there's things getting transferred.
We have this awesome branding and the website was still old. So Jay's like, we need a new website. So it's going to be awesome. It's amazing. I'm excited for it.
All right. Well, everyone have a wonderful holiday and New Year. And yeah, man, we'll see everybody in January.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.